Hey, what's going on, guys? In this one you'll see me just whip out a plywood paludarium here. Got some pond shield like epoxy liner that I'm wanting to test out before I do it on a bigger project. So you'll see a bunch of different things here, just throwing that actual frame together, and then I'll get this epoxy mixed up. It's just the pond shield. It's got some really good reviews. I've heard some good stuff about it. Just wanted to make sure I could make something that doesn't leak and actually holds water before I do anything too big that I'm going to keep in my living room. Now with this frame being just a little bit smaller, I did end up using some silicone on the edges there just because I didn't actually have the plywood hooked together itself. They had some interior stuff just in that front and the back that you can see. So this epoxy didn't end up sticking to the silicone. We did still end up with a watertight seal, but once I build something bigger, I probably won't use that silicone just so I can make sure I get that epoxy into the edge and there's no seam in between that epoxy and the silicone where that meets. One of the things I do feel like made a big difference even with the silicone is going to be this fiberglass mesh. Again, this one is a bit smaller, so I don't really think I need this to strengthen the corners, but I am practicing for something a bit bigger, so I wanted to make sure I got this in there. This roll is about 3 inches wide, so I cut that in half, and then I got that pressed into the first layer before that dried, and I painted just a little bit of epoxy over that. After that first layer dry, you can see that I got some little spots there. Honestly, it might have still been waterproof, but I did decide to get the second layer on. So you can see after I got that second layer, that bottom especially is going to have a nice thick film on it, and those sides look pretty good too. The gaps you can see through is just where the silicone didn't actually adhere to the epoxy super well. Ended up working out just fine. We got the front measured here, just cutting down a little piece of plexiglass. Once that's cut down to size, you'll see we'll just get that silicone in the front. That way you can see a little bit better for the true Paludarium vibe. Once I made sure I liked where that plexiglass was sitting, I just ran another bead of silicone along that inside edge, smoothed that out with my finger so it stayed looking nice. That way it's a bit more waterproof and a little bit more stable for the weight of the water on that front pane. So you can see that joint there a little bit better. Now that we got that all finished up, we're going to have to be working on the background. So for this one I just decided to go pretty simple. We've got some waterfall foam spray that I'm just spraying down on these paper towels. I'll end up cutting the paper towels in the back off. The biggest thing to think about when you're doing this is to make sure you've got it in all the little gaps, because when you start to carve, you don't want little holes or little things in there that water's going to flow through. Inevitably, you will probably get some. If you get it on there nice and thick, all those beads ran right next to each other, you'll have a lot better luck with not having any of those holes. Just getting these edges trimmed down so I can make sure it actually fits in the paludarium itself. So you can see I slide that in there, fits pretty good. Now that that fits, we'll start carving the front of this. The best part about this waterfall spray foam being black is once you carve it down, kind of get that rocky texture to it. You don't have to do too much else to make it look fairly natural, especially once you get plants on it, other things kind of distracting from it. It looks a lot like real rock if you carve it the right way. Wanted to do a quick water test, 1 of the paludarium since I haven't done that yet, 2 just to get an idea of kind of how the flow is looking, if there is any holes that the water's leaking through so I can patch those up. Did end up feeling like I found a couple, but we're going to get this filled up with water. We'll leave that sitting for a few days and see how that looks. Everything ended up looking pretty good. I did a little bit more carving on this background for the waterfall. I did have some bigger holes that once I carved through the back were filling up, so I got those addressed. Then we're just going to take some of this filter media. I'll build a little box around the pump in the back corner here. This is going to provide 2 types of filtration. Obviously it's going to be mechanical filtration so the pump doesn't get clogged. As it just gets pulled through, it'll kind of filter out all the bigger stuff, and it'll do some biological filtration once that bacteria starts to grow in that as well. So we got that built, got that pump pushed back down there in its little cage, then we got the hose poked through the top, and then we siliconed that hose in. Once we gave that some time to dry, we're going to check this flow again, get that pump to turn on. Got lucky that the water stayed in the paludarium. So we checked that out, found a couple other little spots where it was leaking through, so we got those patched, tried it again, and got that to a point where I was liking the flow without any plants in it. So we got some plants thrown in, just random hodgepodge stuff I found around the pond by my house. This was really just supposed to test if we could make something waterproof, but we might as well get some plants in there while we got it. So we got some duckweed, some sphagnum moss, and a couple other random things. Hope you enjoyed this one, guys. We got that bigger project coming up soon, so make sure you hit subscribe so you can stay tuned into that. Thanks for watching.